Adrian Holt never imagined that a decade after his son Miles was declared dead on a cruise, a single glimpse in a crowded mall would shatter his world and reveal a chilling web of lies, manipulation, and a love scam that had kept Miles hidden all these years. Adrian Holt had lived 10 years under a weight no one could imagine. Every morning, he awoke to the same hollow reality. His son Miles was gone. The memory of the cruise haunted him relentlessly. Miles had been 17, full of energy, curious about the world, and eager to explore every deck and corridor of that massive ship. The day had started like any other vacation, filled with laughter and plans for the evening show. But the laughter turned to panic when Miles disappeared. The crew claimed it was an accident, a slip that led to drowning, and the authorities closed the case quickly. Adrian remembered staring at the police report, the words blurred by tears, trying desperately to understand how his son could vanish so completely in a space meant to hold thousands safely. He remembered being told that the body had been recovered, but when he asked to see Miles, he had been told it was too difficult, that he would not want to remember his son that way. Adrian, overwhelmed by grief and fear, had agreed. He had trusted the authorities, trusted the reports, and buried himself in work to avoid the unbearable reality. The emptiness remained. He could still picture the lower deck, the dim lighting, the way the shadows had shifted as the crew scrambled in panic. He could see the frantic faces of the officers who claimed to be searching for him. He could feel the icy metal railing under his palms, salt air sharp in his lungs, and the impossible silence that had fallen when they confirmed Miles was gone. Adrian had tried to convince himself that it was over, that the loss was final. But deep inside, a part of him never believed it. He carried the hope that he might one day see his son again, though he buried it so deep that even he sometimes forgot it existed. One ordinary evening, as he walked through a crowded outdoor mall, his routine unchanged and mind lost in thoughts of paperwork and mundane life, Adrian felt a sudden jolt of recognition. From across the plaza, amidst the sea of strangers, a figure moved in a way so familiar that it stopped his heartbeat. It was a man holding the hand of a small child, walking alongside a woman, yet the motion, the tilt of the head, the casual swing of the arms, it was Miles. Older, yes, taller, but unmistakably him. The resemblance was uncanny. Adrian froze, unable to move, as if rooted to the ground by shock and disbelief. He watched as the light from a street lamp fell across the figure's face, illuminating features he knew as well as his own. The resemblance was so striking it felt impossible, and yet there was no denying it. His mind raced through every explanation. A twin he never knew existed, an elaborate prank, a hallucination born from years of grief. None seemed to fit the clarity of the image before him. Adrian's instinct was to approach, to reach out and confirm, but the reality of the crowded plaza kept him at a distance. He followed from the edges of the crowd, weaving between kiosks and shoppers, his heart hammering in his chest. Every time the figure turned, Adrian felt a pang of hope and fear, as if seeing Miles could bring both reunion and shattering disappointment. But before he could get closer, the trio disappeared into the flow of people, swallowed by the blur of movement and the glare of evening lights. The moment lasted mere seconds, yet it left a permanent mark on his mind. Adrian could not explain why his heart refused to accept the possibility that his son was alive. Nor could he ignore the certainty that had risen from some hidden place deep within him. Returning home that night, Adrian sat in silence, replaying the scene over and over. Each memory from the cruise, each detail of Miles's disappearance, now felt connected to this fleeting sighting. Questions multiplied uncontrollably. Could it really be Miles? If so, why had he been taken, and by whom? What had he endured in the 10 years since that night on the ship? Adrian knew that life could no longer continue as it had. The image of his son alive, somewhere out there, demanded answers. It awakened a fire in him that grief had buried, a determination to uncover the truth, no matter how dark, no matter how long it had been hidden. For the first time in a decade, Adrian Holt understood that closure was not possible without discovery. And the shadow of hope that had slumbered for years now stirred with an urgency that refused to be silenced. Adrian could not shake the image of Miles from his mind. Every corner of his home seemed to whisper that he had been wrong all these years. The grief that had been neatly compartmentalized for a decade now surged like a storm, demanding action. He knew he needed help, someone who could navigate the murky waters between official reports and hidden truths. That is when he reached out to Jonas Creed, a private investigator known for solving cases that involved missing persons and maritime mysteries. Jonas had a reputation for meticulous work and relentless persistence, the kind of qualities Adrian needed if he were to uncover what had really happened to his son. Jonas began by reviewing every available detail from the cruise incident. He scrutinized the original police report, the crew logs, and the emergency response documents. From the beginning, he noticed inconsistencies that no one had previously highlighted. Certain timestamps were missing from the surveillance logs, sections of crew reports were oddly brief, and several camera feeds were marked offline at critical moments. Jonas explained to Adrian that these were not likely oversights. They were deliberate. Someone had manipulated the evidence to create a narrative of an accidental death. Adrian felt a mixture of hope and dread. The thought that Miles might still be alive was intoxicating. Yet the realization that someone had orchestrated the disappearance was terrifying. Jonas tracked down Darius Venn, the cruise ship surveillance officer who had worked during the voyage when Miles disappeared. Darius had lived quietly since the incident, his guilt apparent in the way he avoided conversations and stared at the ground when asked about the past. Initially hesitant, he eventually shared that some cameras had been shut down shortly before Miles's disappearance. The shutdown was requested by an unknown individual who had access to higher-level cruise administration systems. Darius admitted that he had no name, no explanation, only an order he felt powerless to question. Jonas meticulously recorded every detail, knowing that even a small piece of information could be a critical link in understanding what had happened. Adrian listened, both horrified and energized. The realization that the disappearance might not have been an accident made every year of grief feel like a stolen opportunity. Adrian recalled that he had never seen Miles's body clearly. Darius confirmed that, explaining that the identification had been conducted quickly by a senior officer, leaving no opportunity for Adrian to confront the truth. That moment, the one he had avoided, had become a shadow over his mind. Adrian felt a strange clarity. The absence of closure was not an accident, but part of Jonas Creed knew that finding Miles would require more than traditional investigation. The evidence pointed to deliberate manipulation, and the gaps in surveillance hinted at digital tampering. To follow the trail, he brought in Alara Finch, a reclusive digital forensic analyst, renowned for her ability to recover erased data. Adrian watched her work in silence, fascinated and terrified by the complexity of her methods. Alara began by retrieving old surveillance footage from the cruise ship archives, piecing together fragments that had been long forgotten or deliberately hidden. Each clip revealed small, almost imperceptible details that had been missed in the original investigation: a fleeting shadow in the hallway, a hand guiding Miles away from public spaces, and crew members moving in ways that suggested more than routine duties. The reconstructed footage painted a picture that was impossible to ignore. The most disturbing discovery was a hidden sequence that showed Miles leaving a teen event on the ship, accompanied by two unidentified adults who guided him toward a staff-only section. The camera feed then jumped several minutes, confirming that someone had intentionally erased footage during a critical period. Alara's meticulous reconstruction made it clear that the disappearance was orchestrated. Adrian felt his stomach twist as he realized the full weight of the deception. Miles had not simply wandered into danger. Someone had planned his removal with precision, using resources that reached beyond the cruise ship itself. The emotional impact was overwhelming. Adrian had spent a decade mourning a son who might have been taken deliberately, manipulated, and forced into a life that erased everything he had known. As the investigation continued,
Alara uncovered another chilling detail.
Passenger manifests had been subtly altered and Miles's identity had been duplicated in the system. The implications were staggering. Someone had created a new identity for him, embedding him in a network that specialized in long-term identity manipulation. The pieces began to fall into place: the hidden footage, the manipulated reports all pointed to a highly organized operation that preyed on vulnerable teens. Ilara traced digital fingerprints linking the manipulations to an online group led by a man named Riven Cade, notorious for orchestrating identity laundering and psychological control over victims. Adrian felt a mixture of horror and faint hope. If this network could be identified, perhaps Miles could be found and rescued. The more evidence surfaced, the more complex the web appeared. Ilara and Jonas discovered a series of similar cases, each following the same pattern of disappearance, falsified death reports, and identity reassignment. Teens vanished under mysterious circumstances, often near cruise ships, resorts, or travel hubs. The network was sophisticated, ensuring that no trace led back to its operatives. Adrian struggled to comprehend the scale of what had happened. His son had not been a random victim. He had been deliberately chosen and groomed, placed into a life carefully constructed by people who treated him as an object rather than a child. The realization made his heart ache with both rage and sorrow. Amid the mounting evidence, a small piece of Adrian's hope persisted. The vision of Miles at the mall, holding a child's hand, now seemed terrifyingly plausible. The network had kept him alive, manipulated his memory, and placed him in circumstances that maintained the illusion of a normal life. Adrian could picture the way Miles had grown into this new identity, controlled but adapting, shaped by forces he did not understand. Each recovered video clip, each digital trail, each altered record confirmed what Adrian had feared and hoped at once. His son was alive, and the people behind the disappearance were still operating, perhaps just beyond their reach. The emotional weight of the investigation pressed on Adrian. Every day brought a mix of dread and determination. The more he learned, the more urgent it became to act before the network moved Miles again. Erasing him further from the world, Adrian hoped to reclaim him in two. Ilara's work illuminated not only the truth of the past, but the path forward. Adrian understood that the coming days would demand courage, vigilance, and patience. He was no longer a grieving father, trapped by uncertainty. He was a father on a mission, armed with knowledge, witnesses, and evidence that could finally expose the shadows hiding the truth about his son. The hunt for Miles had just begun. Nothing could stop him from pursuing it to the very end. Adrian Holt's journey had taken him far from the quiet life he had built over the past 10 years. The pieces of evidence that Jonas Creed and Ilara Finch uncovered pointed toward a coastal town where Riven Cade's operations had likely relocated Miles. Every detail, from altered financial records to passenger manifests, had narrowed the possible locations. And the sighting at the mall had given Adrian a fleeting glimpse of the son he had thought lost forever. Determined to follow the trail, he joined Jonas on a flight that would bring them closer to the truth than he had ever imagined. The flight itself felt surreal. Each mile traveled pressing the weight of 10 years of grief and unanswered questions deeper into his chest. Adrian could not stop thinking about the child Miles had been, the man he might have become under the influence of forces beyond his comprehension. Upon arrival, they began their investigation by monitoring locations where Miles had been spotted. The woman and child seen with him were registered under aliases that Ladahat traced back to previous victims of Riven Cade's network. Their presence suggested that Miles was living under manipulation and control, his environment carefully constructed to obscure the truth from him. Adrian felt a chilling realization that the son he had glimpsed at the mall was not merely living a hidden life. He was embedded in a system designed to maintain the illusion of normalcy while hiding the network's control. Jonas explained that confronting Miles directly could disrupt the delicate balance and risk losing him again, possibly for good. Adrian's longing to reach his son was intense, but he understood that patience and strategy were vital to their success. The investigation intensified as Jonas and Adrian conducted surveillance, carefully documenting Miles's routines, interactions, and the people surrounding him. Every movement revealed subtle signs of manipulation, the way the woman directed him, the way he seemed hesitant around strangers, and the almost automatic compliance that suggested years of conditioning. Ilara analyzed the financial records and digital communications, uncovering evidence that Riven's network had orchestrated a pattern of relocations for Miles and others like him. Each relocation was designed to sever connections to the past and reinforce the new identity imposed upon the victims. Adrian felt a surge of anger and fear. The network had stolen a decade of his son's life, shaping it according to their own rules. Yet amid the anger, hope remained. The evidence they had gathered meant they had a path forward, a way to bring Miles back from the shadows. One night, as surveillance continued, Ilara intercepted a message confirming that Miles and his assigned family were scheduled to relocate again within 72 hours. The revelation sent a shock through Adrian. This was a narrow window of opportunity, the only chance to intercept the network before Miles was moved further out of reach. Jonas coordinated with local authorities, ensuring that they could act without alerting the operatives. Adrian felt a tense mixture of fear and anticipation, knowing that the coming hours would determine whether he could finally reclaim his son or lose him again. In the quiet moments between surveillance checks, Adrian reflected on the years lost. He remembered the night of the cruise, the grief that had consumed him, and the longing he had buried in the depths of his heart. Now, armed with evidence, allies, and a plan, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The man he had glimpsed at the mall was not just a figure from his imagination. He was a living proof that Miles had survived, despite the orchestrated disappearance. The realization filled Adrian with determination. He would not allow the network to manipulate or control his son any longer. As the deadline for the relocation approached, Adrian, Jonas, and Ilara prepared meticulously. Every detail of the plan was designed to intercept Miles safely, to remove him from the network without exposing him to further harm. Adrian understood that this was a pivotal moment, the culmination of 10 years of fear, hope, and relentless pursuit. The sight of his son, alive and unaware of the true circumstances of his life, drove. The day of the operation arrived with a tense calm that belied the chaos simmering beneath the surface. Adrian Holt, Jonas Creed, and Ilara Finch moved with precision, coordinating with federal investigators who had quietly monitored Rivencade's network for years, but lacked the concrete evidence needed to act. Every piece Ilara had recovered the altered surveillance footage. The fabricated documents, the financial trails now formed the foundation for a coordinated raid. Adrian felt his pulse quicken as he thought about finally seeing Miles again. The boy who had vanished a decade ago, now trapped in a world built to erase him. The hours ahead were fragile. Any mistake could undo years of effort, allowing the network to vanish into the shadows once more as the teams moved through the coastal town. Warehouses, offices, and false residences were swept simultaneously. Each location revealed traces of the network's operations, hidden rooms with evidence of identity manipulation, files detailing psychological conditioning, and encrypted communications detailing relocations of other victims. The scale of the operation left Adrian in stunned disbelief. The network had not only taken his son, but dozens of others, each carefully controlled, each identity rewritten. He understood now that the sight of Miles at the mall was not a coincidence. It was a fleeting glimpse of a carefully maintained illusion, designed to prevent outsiders from seeing the truth. Meanwhile, surveillance confirmed that Miles was preparing to leave for another relocation. The woman and child with him were complicit in maintaining the illusion of a family, themselves victims forced to play roles to control his perception. Federal agents intercepted them quietly, separating the operatives from the victims without raising alarm. Adrian stayed hidden, his heart hammering as he watched the scene unfold. Then he saw him, Miles. The boy he had mourned for 10 years was alive, older but unmistakable. He walked cautiously, alert yet unaware of the true circumstances surrounding his life. For a moment, Adrian felt a wave of disbelief, as if seeing him could not be real. The reunion was delicate. Miles's memories were fractured by years of manipulation, and his reactions were confused, hesitant, and wary. He did not immediately recognize Adrian, yet there was a flicker of familiarity in his eyes, a buried connection waiting to resurface. Adrian felt a mixture of relief and sorrow. The son he had lost was not the same boy he remembered, yet the essence of Miles, the movements, the expressions, the subtle mannerisms remained intact. Therapists and investigators explained that re-establishing trust and identity would take time. But the critical first step had been achieved. Miles was free from the control of Riven Cade's network. Riven Cade and key operatives were arrested during the coordinated raids. Their carefully constructed empire of deception dismantled. Financial records revealed decades of exploitation, and the identities of other victims began to be restored. News of the arrests shocked the nation, exposing a hidden layer of identity crime that had operated with impunity for years. Adrian understood that justice was being served, yet the emotional recovery for his son and himself would take far longer. He focused on guiding Miles back into the world, reconnecting him with his past and helping him understand the life that had been stolen. Over the following months, Adrian and Miles rebuilt their relationship slowly, learning to navigate the complexities of memory, trust, and trauma. Miles's life had been shaped by manipulation, yet he retained fragments of his former self that allowed him to reclaim identity and agency. The child he had been forced to care for temporarily was not his, but he showed compassion, helping the boy find a safe home. Adrian's relief was tempered by the awareness of the years lost, experiences Miles had been denied, and the scars left by the network's control. Yet amid the sorrow, there was hope. The rescue had proven that even the most elaborate deception could be undone, and that love, persistence, and courage could reclaim what had been taken. Adrian Holt never forgot the night of the cruise. The years of grief, or the fleeting image at the mall. That image had sparked a journey that exposed a criminal empire and restored his son to life.